My name is Jessica Naslund. I'm here today to talk about navigating boundaries and building villages. I am a licensed clinical social worker here in St. Louis and work with folks of all abilities in private practice, as well as an adjunct professor in the UMSL Succeed program, teaching healthy relationships and sexuality. When we have this conversation today, what I want us to walk away with is a sense of understanding of what it is that having boundaries and building villages could do for the people that we're supporting. When we have boundaries, when we're able to say what is okay and not okay, and we have a village of people that listen to us, we are more likely to be safe. And so all of these things are truly important in helping to keep people safe in terms of understanding their sexuality, as well as giving them the independence and freedom to express themselves. But in order to do this in a safe way, we have to understand boundaries and we have to have a village that supports us. In my experience in working with the St. Louis ARC and with the St. Louis Regional Sexual Assault Center, we have talked a lot about the likelihood of folks with disabilities being victims of perpetration in a variety of different areas. And because of that, understanding our boundaries and knowing about our bodies and what they do can help keep us safer. So, I want to start off talking about why we're having this conversation. Because the reason why we had the conversation is because there are the folks that we are supporting that are at risk because of maybe some of their abilities. If some of the people that we support are unable to maneuver or to get around certain places, they may require people to support them to be able to get from A to B. And because of this, we might have other folks then that would take advantage of that particular person or use it against them, money and other things. Ethnicity puts people at risk as well. If we mix the color of someone's skin along with possible boundary violations, the consequence is often drastic. And in the culture that we live in now, it is especially important to keep this in the front of our minds as we are thinking about teaching boundaries. We are thinking about the importance of how color puts people at risk. And that if we are not teaching boundaries, then folks can be more at risk. Age, the age of folks, right? Depending on what age they are, they may or may not need support. And they may need support in different areas like using the restroom. As they get older, they may need support in changing. They may need someone to help them with a depends when they are older. This could provide opportunities for people who are seeking out access to folks with disabilities to engage in assault or other. So when we think about age, we are often taught that we are not able to consistently be heard when we say no, maybe even about the touch that we are often given by other people, we might not be able to say no. And we might see people then act out in other ways if they are touched. Our socioeconomic status puts us at risk. If we are having issues with being able to make it to certain activities, if we cannot come up with the financial means to get to the location or pay for the activity or pay for the therapy, then that can also put us at risk. Our gender identity. So if we are questioning whether or not our parts match how we feel on the outside and how we feel on the inside, if they match, and we're also having issues with maybe communicating our thoughts and desires and wishes because maybe we have issues with verbal language, then this can be a serious issue. We already know that folks that are trans are more likely to have mental health issues in terms of suicidal thoughts and ideations and depression. And so when you mix also with a disability where you might not be able to communicate your desires, or where the places in which you have to exist restrict your gender in such a way where you're not able to wear the clothes you want to wear, or cut the hair how you want to cut it, or even be called by a name that you want to be called. Again, then this puts folks at risk because they are looking to other people that are going to give them positive regard or attention for this identity if they're not receiving it in their environment, or if they have to keep it quiet and keep it silent, again, adding to the depression, adding to more likely possible risky behavior. Sexual orientation, again, who we're attracted to, right? If we mix sexual orientation and we also converge that with disability, some of the institutions in which folks live or agencies in which folks are supported, it might skew how an individual shares how they feel about romantic relationships and sexual attraction. If particular family members share their values in such a way that it makes them unable to share some of the feelings that they're having about their orientation, this could also put them at risk. That, and also not having conversations about their particular orientation and dating or flirting could put them at risk. If we don't know how to flirt with somebody of our same gender, then how do we move through that? And what can we do in the safest possible way? So you can see how this could put somebody at risk, particularly if they have a disability, maybe some difficulty communicating or difficulty being able to access a group in a safe environment, so that they are seeking out activities with people who they may not know because they're not connected to those groups. And again, because environments often let us know what we're allowed to do and what we're not. Our support system can be something of a benefit or can also put us at risk. If we don't have much of a support system, if we don't have people to talk to, if we don't have somewhere to go with our information, then we are less likely to be able to get help when we need to. And location. If we live in rural Missouri or in rural parts of the state, we're less likely to have access to therapies. We're less likely to have access to other individuals that look like us or have same abilities as us. We might have less opportunities for social interactions. We may have less opportunities for being able to get a job, which then also puts us at risk because, again, if we don't have a job, we are reliant upon other people or any of those things that can put us at risk. And access to technology. For a lot of folks, this is a big hot button topic because for some of our young folks, especially during COVID, we've seen an uptick in pornography use and an uptick in engaging in relationships with people that are maybe not of age, or in unsafe ways online where we feel like they could be in danger. And because we have been reliant on technology in order to be able to stay physically healthy and safe, it has cost us in some other areas in terms of socialization and also in boundary violations, which has impacted how we've been able to operate at home. Now, I am brought to you today by the Safe Circle Coalition. My spiel, in fact, is that I try to reach out through this coalition as a member of it to make sure that we are always working toward the mission to identify and recommend best practices in the area of healthy relationships and sexuality, as well as to raise awareness in the St. Louis region about prevention, identification, response to abuse or exploitation. So when I think about why I'm doing this for all of these reasons. I want to make people more safe. I want to make sure that you all have the tools that you need in order to raise people, in order to caregive for individuals and give them the best possible tools so that when you're not here, you feel comfortable and more safe that they have the tools, or that they know where to get the tools in their village to be able to be safe when you are no longer here to be able to keep them safe.
Jessica, I have a few questions in the chat. Could I go ahead and ask?
Oh, please do.
Awesome. So the first one is, this is very interesting. I don't understand what you meant by villages, and they're asking for you to explain it in some simpler terms.
Excellent. So when I say village, what I mean is friends and family. A village is a network of friends, family, and possible support staff that are really there for you when you need them in the good times and the bad. That's what I think of as a village.
Another person wants to know if you have any suggestions for folks that maybe don't have a very good support system.
Yes. So if we are able to introduce these individuals to social settings and help them connect in those ways, we can help them to build a village. We might need to, as the caregivers or as the people that are what I would consider the gatekeepers, to almost reach out and organize some of these activities, or promote the individual to organize something where they can start socializing or getting out there and talking to other individuals that had their same abilities or their same interests. Building a support group of people that are wanting to listen to you and not because they get paid to is usually your best bet, your best way to create an environment that's more safe. If you have people that you really trust to be there for you. And so creating a village would help with that. And the way we create that village is by creating opportunities for socializing. Does the individual have a job? Are they able to volunteer? Are they able to join social activities like ARC has different activities at different times when we're not in the middle of a new strain. But we're thinking about cooking class. I'm thinking about bowling. I'm thinking about sports teams. I'm thinking about art club. I'm thinking about book club. All of these different social activities that possibly could tap into an interest of the individual.
Somebody also wants to know, and I'll add something and then I'll let you expound upon it. They say, do you have resources for safe access to technology like social media and dating apps? And I'll preface by saying out of our transition department last year, and I think we might do this again, we hosted a 6-week series about technology and how to have a healthy relationship with technology and boundaries. And if you're interested in that, you can send me an email and I can pass that along to the right folks. But Jessica, what suggestions do you have?
There is no safe dating sites. I'm going to just put that out there. I'm sorry to burst anybody's bubbles. But
I
at
agree.
this point, that's it. That's all I can say is there is no truly safe place to date. What we can do is develop tools to be able to make dating as safe as possible. So, for instance, like learning how to, if we're meeting people online at first, making sure we FaceTime and see them face to face, making sure that we meet in making sure that we tell somebody where we're going and that we meet in a public place, making sure we have enough money to be able to get back home or a ride to get back home, and our phone is completely charged to be able to contact the individual. And if we live alone, do we have somebody we call when we come back home to let them know when we got back from our date? So these are things I set up with neurotypically developing folks as well as neurodivergent folks. So these are the same safety skills that we can use to date. Have we seen them? Do we know they're a real person? Are we meeting out in public? Can we escape if we want to and leave at any moment? And do we have enough money to be able to do that and to pay for ourselves for that date so we're not in debt to anybody?
Good points. The next two questions are about Safe Circle, and they're a little complex, so I'll kind of lead in. So they're wanting to know, Is it just for people with intellectual disabilities, and is it open to the public? And what I'll say is we put on all kinds of different events and programs and have different projects, and different ones have different audiences. So we're also working on maybe a presentation that we might do at different conferences and things like that. And that would be more geared to professionals in the field. But so there's a use for some of the work that we're doing kind of across the board. But do you want to kind of take a stab at answering that as well, Jessica?
Absolutely. So my answer is that although Dave Hingsburger created this ring of safety format to support the individuals with disabilities who identified as women who had been sexually assaulted, this ring of safety is for everyone. This is for everybody, regardless of your abilities. If we all had these things in our lives, we would all be more safe. And I speak from this, I speak to this, and I want to be very clear about that. This is for everybody. If we all had these pieces, again, we would all be more safe. It is very specific to people with disabilities in the concept of the way Dave Hingsburger had wrote it. But the way that I will be sharing it today is a way that we can think about how we are doing this with not just our neurodivergent children, but with our neurotypically developing folks. They need conversations about all of these pieces as well. And wouldn't it be nice if you have had some of this stuff in your life as well? So let's go through these point by point so I can explain a little bit about the ring of safety. Thinking about, first of all, sexuality, privacy awareness is where we're going to start. Okay. So privacy awareness, specific to the boundaries that I was talking about today. Privacy awareness is the idea that we know what privacy is, what it means for things to be private, what means for body parts to be private. So usually it's those clothes that are covered by our bathing suits. That's usually how I explain it. Usually the body parts that are private are the ones that are covered by our bathing suits. And most of the time, we do not show those to anyone unless they're a doctor checking us out, or unless somebody is helping us to use the restroom. And we also need support in the restroom. What I would go further to say is that in understanding how to teach privacy while you're working through things like helping somebody use the restroom, you can teach them privacy by doing things like asking permission and waiting for a response before going into the restroom with them, or asking for permission and waiting for a response before helping them bathe in the shower. You could pull the bar down in the shower so that you don't see their body, but you just reach your arm over the shower curtain and you help them wash their body. You could also do hand over hand in teaching folks to wash their body. You could also write a task analysis or a social story for washing their body, because the ultimate goal, if we can, is to make sure that the individual we're supporting can wash their body by themselves, because it gives them more autonomy. It gives them more privacy and understanding of privacy. And so they know when people are allowed to and are not allowed to touch their parts, because they are responsible for cleaning and touching their own parts, and they don't rely on other people for that. Spaces. So understanding what a private space is. A private space is your room or your bathroom with no one else around, with the window shut and the door shut and the blind shut. So very specific behavioral definitions of space is extremely important when communicating what private space is. It is your room or your bathroom at your home with no one else around, with the window shut and the blind shut and the door shut. So a bathroom in Walmart, a bathroom in Target, those are not private spaces. So we have to make sure that we are practicing and understanding what private spaces mean. And those places that are not private, that are not private, are public spaces, are ones where anybody could come at any time. One of the best ways I've seen to talk about privacy and space is using the circles curriculum to talk about space and what kinds of touch is okay with what people. Because understanding that privacy of space, knowing that right now we have to have about 6 feet of distance between people, and how not knowing about space and not knowing about the privacy, not knowing about the body bubble, so to speak, or that space that you must keep between folks, could get someone into a situation where they look like they're not understanding consent and can immediately put them in a dangerous situation. So not understanding what private space is and being taught that by their caregiving group and by the people that love and they trust the most to teach them about space is extremely important, so that again they don't violate other people's boundaries, which could get them in a lot of trouble. Behaviors, what behaviors are private and what are public. Behaviors in private, I'm thinking more like scratching our penis, our testicles, our breasts, our vulva, right? The outside parts of our genitals. Some behaviors that are not are not acceptable most of the time in public spaces are talking about, taking off our clothes, especially the only place that we're able to be naked is in the hospital when they've told us to switch into a gown, or in our own room or our own bathroom with no one else around, unless we are in a romantic relationship, and we can talk about what that might look like. I can help you safety plan that later if we're having those kind of conversations. But understanding what private behaviors are and what public behaviors are, understanding what private talk is, like things that are private. So like people's medical diagnoses, or their address, their phone number, their last name, asking people questions that are private. So asking staff about romantic relationships. So all people, in order to teach privacy, must set boundaries in order to teach the individuals they're supporting. If we're supporting individuals, we're family members, and we want to just, let somebody go because they just like to do that thing. If that thing is violating a boundary or not understanding privacy, we're actually setting them up for failure. We're setting them up to be scolded or taught by somebody else who doesn't love and care about them. So it is our job as people who are caregiving, not necessarily paid staff consistently, but caregiving definitely. Paid staff, always communicating boundaries, but and also caregivers communicating boundaries. Now, caregivers, we're going to talk about this later, can share their values as to why we have those kind of boundaries, but staff only share health and safety concerns. They don't share their values. As one of my favorite sexuality educators say, stay in your lane. Know what your lane is. If you're the parent, stay in your lane, right? You know what your lane is, and I'll teach you what your lane is after we go through some of these. And if you're a professional, stay in your lane, because if you step out of your lane, the consequences could be detrimental to the person you're supporting, as well as to your livelihood or your ability to maintain your job.
A really good question that I think you're going to enjoy answering, Jessica, which is, at which age should you start the privacy conversations?
We start privacy from the very beginning of being able to communicate. This is private time in the bathroom. Whenever we are talking about potty training, whenever we're talking about getting changed or dressed with our clothes, we aren't changing our small people. We're not changing them in front of other people. We're showing that we do that in a private space. We don't just whip it out right in the middle of the living room, right? Especially if our individuals start aging. So from the very beginning, we're talking about privacy. This is your part. Nobody is allowed to look at or touch your part. It is private to you. And If people are pulling out their parts in public, we're saying, no, we are only allowed to take out those parts when we are by ourselves. We're only allowed to take out those parts in our bedroom with nobody else around. So you always have that same tagline each time to be able to teach it. That's not the place that we do it. But we start from birth. We start from birth, right? That's private when they start to grab at your chest, when it's unwanted, or when it's not, breastfeeding time or things like that. Obviously, when they're starting to, I'm 2 or 3 years old is when I would say roughly when we're starting to really be more in tune with some verbal communication and with some physical boundary cues, physical things that we can do. But I say start the conversation from the very beginning, as well as naming parts. This is important too, and this kind of goes along with it. We need to create opportunities for our children to say no, and for the people that we support to say no to things. Dave Hingsburger says, if you can't say no to peas, you can't say no to penis. If you can't say no to the most basic things in your life, like what you want to wear and what you want to eat, then when it comes to big decisions about your safety, you might not have confidence in yourself. What we have realized through our work in Safe Circle is that our self-esteem, our ability to trust ourselves, comes from our opportunities to set goals and make decisions. If we are never allowed to say no to something, then we won't be able to develop a skill of being able to be heard by somebody and or communicate a boundary. And that starts at home with the people that we love and care about. This also is helpful for anybody who's trying to decrease aggression. If you give choices, and I'm talking 3 choices, not 2. 2 is an ultimatum. You do this or this. That's an ultimatum. 3 is a choice. You can take a shower now. You can take a shower in 15 minutes when your show is over, or you can take one before bedtime at 8 o'clock. If you give choices, you are giving the choices that are appropriate for your environment and for what you need to be able to get done for health and safety. So you give those choices that you are accepted of, that you accept, basically. You give those 3 possible choices, and then the individual gets to make that choice. And that gives them the confidence, and that also gives them the buy-in that you need for you to say later, you remember you said you were ready in 15 minutes and you got to make this choice. So when we think about trust, so behaviorally defined trust for folks, we do what we say what we do. Well, I want to trust you, and you said you would take your shower in 15 minutes when I gave you the choice. And so go ahead and follow through on your choice. And that way we can build more trust. But trust goes both ways. This opportunity to be able to say no and be listened to when we're given choices, and we are given these opportunities to make choices, we again are less likely to be aggressive. Also, going back to this, I'm thinking of an individual that has been supported before. At one point had multiple staff and had to be in line of sight 24 hours, and they noticed intense aggression. When they started to decline in terms of 24-hour line of sight supervision and given private time for an hour or 2 a day, they noticed an immediate decrease in aggression and escalation. So when we talk about privacy is extremely important, and allowing people to have private time to be able to, especially folks that get sensory overloaded at school or in their jobs or with emotions, they need some downtime. And without privacy and the ability to have that privacy, or to say, no, I don't want to be around people right now, we don't have the chance to recharge. And every one of us would struggle in this room if we didn't have the opportunity for privacy, if somebody was always watching us, if we never were able to even go to the bathroom by ourselves, you can guarantee that we would be frustrated at some point to not be able to be alone. So when we think about that, I think about the ways in which you are trying to support the individual to make good choices, and by giving them choices that you are comfortable with them making. You need to be somebody who listens. They need someone who really listens to them and listens past their words, but listens using their eyes, listens using the body language that you're interpreting. The more time you spend with an individual, especially if you are family with them, the more likely you are to be able to read their emotions, their feelings, and their possible triggers. And so knowing this can also help keep you in the loop of anything going on, and also keep individuals safer in terms of being able to talk to an individual, feel like they're believed. We check in about vocabulary, because sometimes the vocabulary that the individuals that we're working with or that we're family with, they might use different words for things, or they might have picked up a different word in a song or from another family member. We need to check in about vocabulary. If they said, I just did it with somebody, oh, what does did it mean? I need you to do your best not to respond in ways that show your immediate emotional reaction, and try to just check in for vocabulary, because it might not be what you think. Did it could be, I just went and put all the dishes away, or I just went and did this other thing. It could not mean any kind of sexual innuendo or things that we might, again, that we might assume that that's what they're talking about. Oh, I kissed them. Oh, but we're going out. Okay, what does that mean? Right? So checking in about vocabulary. Vocabulary changes as culture changes. And so it's really important to keep in the loop with vocabulary. Some individuals will use storyboards. We might need to start expanding storyboards and think about ways that we can add in different words, especially as these individuals are aging, going through puberty and those pieces. Puberty is an age where I see a lot of boundary violations. And so having somebody who listens, and who listens for potential issues, could also catch someone before they've done anything that has crossed a line of consent or a boundary that they can't come back from.
I have
As somebody,
another, oh, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead,
Uh,
Madeline.
there's another question that I think is a really good one, and is something I actually hear a lot, is what is the best way to give someone privacy when they need constant support due to seizures? There's always someone right by her, even watching while she uses the restroom to make sure she doesn't fall off the toilet from a seizure.
Okay. A crack in the door. A crack in the door versus the door wide open, where you can see their feet. You don't have to see their body, or you can position yourself in such a way where you both aren't looking at each other's faces. You can see whether or not they've had a seizure. If like maybe you see it like a seize up, you're not going to be able to see this watch, either at that moment when they fall off the toilet, but you'll be able to see it from that door crack. You won't be able to catch them most of the time, even if you're right there. Right. So leaving the door crack open, so that again, you can't really see their face, so they can again make all the faces they want to. Imagine if somebody watched you take a poop. Could you imagine somebody watching your faces? And could you imagine how uncomfortable you might feel? And what if it became commonplace? Oh my goodness. So if we're thinking about that, and we're thinking about ourselves, and what if we're there someday? What kind of respect would we want in that moment? And also within the context of staying within those health and safety parameters, crack the door open a little bit. If we're taking off somebody's depends, and they're an aging person, they're not happy with what's happening, maybe we leave the blanket on over them and we help them learn how to take it off themselves, and we just help them with the part about where we put it on their ankles, and then they can put themselves the rest of the way up. If they want alone time in their room, same thing. You crack the door and you sit where you can't quite see their face, but you can see part of their body. So they feel like that they have that moment alone. They feel like they have enough privacy. An earbud in one ear. So they feel like, you're a little bit distracted. Any of those things might be helpful.
Something that I've seen too is there's a lot of sort of unique technology supports that, for time alone, whether it be like an alarm or, and those are also restrictive. So you want to be careful, but also, probably not quite as restrictive as someone being there the whole time. There's one more question here. Someone says, can you elaborate on clarifying vocabulary? Like when someone says they are my girlfriend, what probing questions to ask? They often define girlfriend as just seeing a girl that he likes. So how can I tell? That's a really good question. I hear that one too.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. So this is that teachable moment. Okay. So you say, okay, what is a girlfriend to you? What does that mean? Or what kinds of things do girlfriends talk about? What kinds of touches do we have with this girlfriend? So we don't have to say, we can use the same language that they're using, but we can ask specifically, what kind of touches do you have with this girlfriend? What kinds of things do you talk about with this girlfriend? Okay, so this sounds more like a friend. Because the difference between a friend and a romantic sexual relationship is that we're attracted to the person. So again, do you like this person as more than a friend? Could be a question. It could also be, and then you can say, have you asked her to be your girlfriend? Because that is like a romantic relationship. A girlfriend is two different words, right? So we can talk about, and I think the best way that would be able to describe this without specifically talking about girlfriends and romantic partners in particular is using that the circles curriculum where we talk about which kinds of touches and which kinds of talk happen in each of the social circles that we're in. So one of the social circles is the middle, that's you. So you're allowed to talk and touch yourself as much as you want. And then you got a family circle with like a little heart with it, and that's your family and also your sweetheart or romantic partner, right? And then they have different kinds of touches and talk with them. And then we've got our friend circle, and we've got different kinds of touches and talk with them. And then we ask them after that, okay, now that you know that these are the kinds of talks and touches that are in each of these groups, where does this person belong? For a lot of the folks I support, I might even have them print out pictures of these individuals in their own home, especially my folks that have some lower abilities and need a little bit more visual social cues. I might actually have their family members and themselves take pictures of family and friends and helping professionals and put them in circles, in the circles format in their house so that they can look to see who belongs to each of those circles and what kinds of touches are okay with each of those people. So again, teaching about boundaries. I'm hoping that I answered that question.
I think it was great.
Understanding of personal rights. So this is, again, an ongoing process, and it syncs to our environment. So as our environment changes, so do the rights and boundaries of each of those environments. So what are our rules or our boundaries, our rights, so to speak, in the agency? What are our rules or rights in this house? What are our rules or rights in public? What are our rules and rights of our bodies? And we make sure to deliver the information in a variety of different ways. Now, I know the St. Louis ARC, since I had worked there in previous decade ago, I guess now, there were opportunities to have this information delivered verbally. It was written, it was done in video format, and it was done in picture format. So they captured a variety of different ways to express the information. And for some of these things in this ring of safety, you might have to look at a variety of different ways to deliver the information so it's delivered correctly. And what's best is that everybody within the environment is doing the same thing. So a huge piece to this is the healthy self-concept or self-esteem. It's our view of our worth, and it can be influenced by performance, our abilities and our ability to make choices, our appearance, right? How we look, and the judgment of others that we find important or that we care about in our lives. Now, our self-esteem can be taken away by some of these things, but we can only usually build self-esteem by setting goals and achieving them or not achieving them. We can learn just as much from not achieving a goal as we can from achieving it. Now, most of us can think about this when we think about romantic partners or romantic interests in the past, or even friendships we've tried to have with other people in the past. Maybe we've tried it and maybe the friendship or the relationship didn't work out, but we learned something about ourselves. We learned about what we wanted to put up with and what we didn't want to put up with. That is just as important for individuals that we're supporting who have a variety of abilities. We need opportunities for healthy sexuality. So my opportunities for healthy sexuality is we need to be able to go out and have these relationships, have these conversations with other people. We need to go out and be friends. So when I'm talking about sexuality in particular, I'm not talking about the physical act of penetrative sex. I am talking about how we carry ourselves with our gender, what we think about our body, and how we feel about how we look in our clothes, how we feel about who we're attracted to in our relationships, what we think families should look like. We need to create these opportunities to go out and meet people and go out and have conversations with individuals and build these villages, build these friends, build these people in their lives, because as caregivers and even support staff, we are not going to be in these people's lives forever. We do not have guaranteed life. At any point, we could be taken from this world. So are you providing opportunities for people that you support to create a life outside of you and outside of staff? And when I think about this ring of safety, I think about how most of the people that we support, and definitely young folks in particular, do not have power and control over anything in this ring of safety, especially sexuality education. Across the board, we don't have any consistent sexuality education. We don't consistently teach about what parts do and what they're for. We don't consistently teach in educational settings about how to navigate consent or saying no, or peer pressure in sexual situations. We're not having discussions about that. And what I'd like to see is families talking a little bit more about their value systems, about where their values lie around sexuality, about what they think about gender identity, about what they think about how we carry ourselves in relationships, and what they see for yourself, what we see for them in their future, depending on their abilities, right? Because if they're not able to give consent, then maybe we stop at them being able to explore romantic relationships, and then being able to explore friendships, and then being able to engage in sexual activities with themselves as individuals. And again, all these boundaries help make for folks that are a little bit safer. If I know about my body and what it does, if I know what is private and what's not, and when people have invaded my privacy, if I have the opportunity to say no and I've practiced it, if I have somebody who listens to me and who would stick up for me or come to my aid if I needed them, if I understood what my rights were, and if I felt good about myself and the goals that I set, and I'd have opportunities to learn all these things, I would be more safe. And with disabilities, I feel that all folks would be more safe with all of this, but any person with these things in their lives would be more safe. But what you will notice is that often the individual does not have access to provide these things for themselves. It is the environment in which we are placed that provides many of these opportunities, that provides the sexuality education, that gives us the opportunities to go out and drive us places, that helps us to understand what our rights are and explains them to us, who listens to us, who gives us choices and possible consequences, who helps us to understand what privacy is. Again, if we had these things, we'd all be a lot safer. Caregivers versus professional role. As a caregiver, your role is boundaries. So what those rules and rights are, what's acceptable for you in your home and those values in your home, and the rules and social norms of the world. So sometimes when I'm trying to explain something at home, I might say it like this. In the world, they do this. In my home, we're going to do this. And the consequence, if you don't follow that, is this. And as a caregiver, I'm allowed to give my values because I'm teaching my people how to live in this world, possibly without me or without my oversight. And so I need to know that they have all the values that I want to instill in them. But that is much different than my professional role. As a professional, when I'm a therapist, I set my boundaries and I talk about rules and social norms. I talk about what the rights and rules are of the agency, the rights and rules are of this job, the rights and rules are of the school, and your expected social norms, those things that aren't often written down, but have to be explained. Like how long it's okay to stare at somebody. 3 seconds is about all it's okay. And after that, if you do it more than twice, it's getting creepy. Usually contacting a person more than one time through text message, if they haven't responded to you, becomes creepy and or be seen as a boundary violation. So we talk about some of those social norms. But as a caregiver, you're giving values. And as a professional, you're staying in your lane and you're not giving your personal values. You're giving choices and consequences. And that's right. What's missing for professionals? Your values. Please leave them out and stay in your lane. I want to give enough time for questions. So when we are thinking about this today, I want us to think about us being a sexual health advocate or an advocate in general for boundaries. Boundaries have to do with our sexuality and about how we carry our body and about how we feel about it. So it's all encompassing. Be an advocate by always coming from a place of health and safety, by always considering environmental constraints, like what those rules are and what the rights are in that environment. If you're a support staff and you know the family values at home are not what is in line with the goal of the individual, how is there a way that we can compromise, or is there a conversation that we can have with individuals to mediate the situation, or explain to the individual the constraints within the environment as somebody who's an outside unbiased source. When I think about teaching boundaries specifically, I think about it as being concrete, making sure that you're using specific behavioral examples. Trust is when someone doesn't hurt us on purpose, when they say what they do and do what they say. Love means doing my dishes. Again, these are my values. Please choose your own. Love is doing my dishes. I know you love me when you do my dishes and help me do laundry, but that might not be love for everybody else. So explain what love is in terms of your values if you're the caregiver to the individual that you're supporting or to the family member. Listen well and ask for clarification. Again, asking for definitions, asking for, well, what does that mean? Trying to keep a straight face as possible when asking these questions, because if you show too many negative emotions too quickly, the individual will shut down and stop sharing. And as you can see through a lot of these slides, you'll see that I've put sexual health on almost everything, because I feel like that is the intricate piece to being able to help people understand boundaries and understand their bodies and feel more powerful, and therefore be able to stand up for themselves, be less likely to be exploited. And if they are hurt or taken advantage of, they do have somebody that they can tell, because they know that you will never stop advocating for them. Here are some of the teaching materials when I think about boundaries specifically. The sexual boundaries I focused on a lot today because those are the ones that I'm seeing a lot that really scare a lot of families. We can deal with aggression, but when people have violated sexual boundaries, we have hit a whole new ballgame. So some of the teaching materials here can be used for both the sexual pieces, but also specifically for just boundaries in general. So the circles program here in this middle that I talked about, that purple me circle, the blue family circle, the friendship circle, you can make up what kinds of touches are okay in each one of these if you're the family member, the caregiver. If you're the support staff, you might ask the family member or caregiver to give you the names of the people in these groups and talk about the kinds of touches so that you can show that as an example for them to generalize to other folks, because we do see that with some folks in specific to their disability is the challenge with being able to generalize from one situation to the next. And we need to be able to generalize touches in particular, because consent, physically violating those boundaries by either being aggressive or sexually or violating any kind of sexual genital naked boundaries, have immense, intense, immediate negative repercussions. And people don't usually give a lot of chances for those. And so we really need to be thinking about those particular boundaries. Taking care of myself, again, hygiene and puberty. A 5 is against the law lets you know about other kinds of boundaries, about how close to stand to somebody, when is it too close to say, things that we're supposed to say, not supposed to say. I like Boardmaker Plus for being able to put together social stories with pictures. I like the book, the Teaching Children with Down Syndrome About Their Bodies. And again, I use these for all people. I create eclectic curriculums because I don't think things that are just for autism or just for Down syndrome necessarily have to be just for those folks. In fact, I do think that if we all had some of these skills, we'd all be better humans and better at our relationships. And maybe we'd just be teaching a little bit better as well about how to do all these things. And I've got my email address, but I'm leaving some time for Q&A.
Yeah, I've got you going. We got one already. So I think these go together, actually. I think it's maybe the same person. So hadn't heard that description of when a stare becomes creepy. I have difficulty with eye contact. I feel like people would just say that's wrong or that's creepy, but not be able to define why or how to adjust the behavior.
Okay. So yeah, oftentimes people would just say, oh, it's creepy. But then oftentimes what I'll do is ask other classmates in class to describe, okay, so what is it like when somebody looks at you? Well, when they stare at me, I think that they are looking at me because they don't like me, or maybe there's something hanging out of my nose, or maybe they're thinking something bad about me behind, like they've heard stuff about me behind my back, right? We go a lot of different places in our head. And if we're on the spectrum, that sometimes we perseverate on thoughts. So sometimes we get paranoid about why somebody is staring at us. And also sometimes we like zone out and stare at somebody else, just not even meaning to. And all kinds of folks can do this. Um, but yeah, when somebody stares right back at you and they give you that funny look, then you might know, like, again, you have to be looking at somebody's face. And if it's uncomfortable for you to look at somebody's face, you might not know that you have looked too long. But usually the facial expression will let you know that they're creeped out. It usually looks something like this. Yeah, all of those things, right? It's a facial expression, it's a body movement, and it's almost never words. Almost, I've seen some people say, "What the hell are you looking at?" But I rarely see that. I usually see this. And then like a complete like try to look the other way. And so usually that creepy is that visual thing that you see on somebody's face. Like you see them like get grossed out or like, ew, I don't like anything that's happening here. Right? And that's hard to recognize sometimes on someone's face, if we haven't known them a long time, or if we're not good at looking at people's faces.
This next question, I'm not sure that I know quite what this means, so I might ask, unless you can read it, but I might ask them to reword. But He says, when you are a self-advocate, what category would you put us as? I think this is useful for everyone. Are you referring to the circles when you ask that question?
As a self-advocate, I'm referring to somebody who has a disability themselves. So anybody that has a disability themselves is a self-advocate.
That was I was way reading into the question, I think. All
Yeah.
right.
So I have a disability. Nobody knows. Mine's invisible. I have multiple sclerosis, right? So, walking through that, and I don't have to tell anybody because it's invisible, right? But again, I'm a self-advocate now, but I wasn't a self-advocate before this. So
We have another good question. They were saying, yes, I was just about to ask if I could share this presentation with a daughter on the spectrum not diagnosed and another daughter who has a young son. I wish I had these skills when I was raising my children 20 years ago. Of course, my autistic son will benefit the most, and thank you.
Oh, you're so very welcome. And culture changes. We're now at a culture where we talk about this more. So we're actually having these open conversations and we're all saying like, oh yeah, the bus did not teach me enough. The music I was listening to, Vanilla Ice did not teach enough. Right. And I'm sorry, I just dated myself. I'll be 40 next year. So Vanilla Ice is not a good teacher. Neither was LL Cool J, obviously, or R. Kelly or any of those people who are. So we were not being educated in the ways that we need to now, and that was culturally based. Not our faults. We know better when we do better. So good job, parent. You showed up.
If somebody was interested in your services, how would they, first of all, what do they look like? And second of all, how would they go about getting in touch?
So I am an AASECT certified sexuality educator supervisor. So I supervise other sexuality educators. So if there's any people who want to be a sexuality educator, I supervise folks. If they want my services in particular to education, I offer education. And we'll go through a set of curriculum to discuss. That can also be done through like EMAP funding, and we can get funding that way for those folks that are interested. I do therapy. I work with folks that are of all abilities. I just happen to love this population and have a specialization right here. I work with a lot of adults in relationships where one person is on the spectrum and the other person is not. And these are all adults. Yeah. So therapy and education are the services I offer. I have a private office space, not very far from the St. Louis Arc main location. So I'm at Warson and Olive. And I also sometimes meet folks out and walk and do other things to be able to, stay in our bodies sometimes when we went through trauma. Sometimes that's helpful. Let's see. And oh yeah, and join the Succeed program at UMSL because I've been teaching there for like 8 years, like since it started. Woo! I love UMSL, right? So Succeed program. That's where you could find me. And that's an investment.
It is.
I'm on Psychology Today. Oh, and the Creve Court Counseling Associates website. Sorry.
I do, and I sent a lot of people your way because these are questions I get a lot. So if you're a parent that's wondering if you're alone, you're definitely not. These are questions that I spend all day fielding. So I have a tough one for you. This person says, I'm a mom of a sexually abused 17-year-old daughter, happened at 16 to her knowledge by her bio dad. She has autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and IDD. She's in trauma therapy. How does she as a parent show up and control her feelings and her challenges through difficult times? She's saying that she also feels traumatized by this.
Absolutely. How could you not feel for your child and also carry some of that grief with you as if you could have stopped it, which you couldn't. So don't ever feel like you could stop any of those things or know them in advance. That's not your shame to carry. So go ahead and put that down. Okay. So the best way to be able to navigate this is to learn how to fill yourself up energy wise before you have to go and do this. Each time there's no way I can tell you to turn off your feelings for your child, because I don't think that for some of us that exists. And so it's more about being able to get enough downtime in, get enough recharge time in so that you don't feel emotionally vulnerable, like you don't have any more skins left and you're like burnt crisp. You need to have enough skin on you to be able to get through this. It's like walking through sun. It's a very rough metaphor, but it's real. So that means that whatever you do before the session occurs, you're doing self-care. You are making sure you've eaten, you're making sure you drink water, you're making sure that you've had some kind of downtime before you have to go into the session with your child. Afterwards, you are making sure that life is as easy as possible. You don't have anything scheduled. You have ordered in food for the night that everybody loves. You are not doing dishes. You are not touching laundry. You are not expending any other energy unless that's what you do to like self-soothe. Like I'm a cleaner and I clean everything to self-soothe. So like watch out. Like, I mean, I'd show you my closet right now. It looks like Marie Kondo just came up in here and rolled all my towels. I have a problem. But if that's the way you can self-soothe and that's your coping skill, use it. But if it's not, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Just do all of those things that I just said. Take care of yourself. Don't be on for anybody. Don't have to go anywhere afterwards. Make sure that you have some personal space that you can take, even if you both go in separate rooms and watch your favorite shows that you laugh to. We're doing our best to laugh. We're doing our best to listen to music that is positive, that uplifts. We're watching a show that makes us either cry the good tears or makes us laugh. We are trying not to dose ourselves with any negativity after that or any extra pressure to interact with anybody else other than to process the information and kind of let it go.
Good. I'd also say mom can get counseling too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mom can get counseling through the YWCA for free as a parent. Over the age of 18, and because they're over the age of 18 and they've had a family member who's been assaulted, they can, at this point, I still believe that they are offering free therapy through grant funds for family members of those that have been assaulted.
And somebody says they receive therapy through the Crime Victim Center.
Yes, absolutely. The crime victims that are very good.
These are hard ones. These are hard
really
conversations.
There's never any easy path to take when somebody that you care about has violated trust in such a way where it can't be undone. And therefore you have to set up boundaries in order for your child to be safe. And maybe the thing you say is a tagline that you repeat every time that your child says that they miss this person. I miss them too. And we will wish them well and we'll send them good vibes into the universe, or we'll send them good energy, or we'll send them prayers, or whatever spiritual connection that you have, right? That we wish them well. I'm sorry that we can't see them now, but it's for health and safety. It's to keep you healthy and safe. And again, depending on the understanding of the individual, that might be enough. That we can't let you go there because it's not safe anymore. And that those family members may not be safe either.
Thank you for coming, and we hope you have a great night.
Thank you.